joining. My name is Noah Greenswag. I'm IonE's Grants Program Associate. I either have communicated with you or I will communicate with you for those who are interested in applying for an Impact Goals grant in 2024 or reviewing an Impact Goals grants in 2024. And thank you for being here. I'm going to pass things off to Jessica to introduce herself and to get the ball rolling. So Jessica, if you want to take over, and I'll also be sending a link to the RFP and FAQ in the chat shortly.
Thank you, Noah. And while we're recording this and I'm going to broadcast it for others to review in the future, I want to take this chance to thank you for, this is a big time of the year when we roll out this impact goal grants and then all of the review process and the evaluation and the awards. And so kudos to you for carrying this heavy load on behalf of the entire IonE community. So thank you, Noah. Okay, so I am Jessica Hellman. I'm the Executive Director for the Institute on the Environment. We love this moment when we get to come together and announce, and Melissa Kenny's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here on the announcement, but I get to give the preamble, the annual call for proposals or request for proposals for our Impact Goal granting program. I want to give just in a couple of moments some broader context for where these impact goals fit in this RFP fits into the Institute as a whole, into our strategic plan, including a new strategic plan. This isn't just background information, it's actually pertinent to the to a successful proposal, what it means to successfully address the needs and intent of the impact goals call, because it's very much connected to what we are seeking to accomplish at the Institute on the whole. But first, before I do that, I think, Noah, the next slide is a shout out that we were asked to share given this webinar and the people who may be viewing it live or subsequently for this upcoming Twin Cities Office of Sustainability event on climate action and incorporating climate action into research and teaching, set for February 9th at noon. You can come view online, and there's a registration at RC Online link that you can follow here. You are very much invited. This is an important topic about how we all participate in climate action in our work. Okay, so I have a few things I would like to say before we specifically get to the RFP. And that is, what is it that we're essentially trying to accomplish with this impact goal granting program? This year, we have $2 million to invest into team-based, outcome-oriented. You'll hear this notion of a goal. A goal is very, very important to this call and also to all the things that we do at the Institute. We are striving toward a future where people and planet prosper together. That itself is a goal. Sustainability is, we may not know precisely what it is, but it is a state that we're seeking to achieve that needs knowledge and people and information and a capacity in order to accomplish that goal. So we're looking for outcome-oriented proposals. We're looking for things that are interdisciplinary in response to this call for proposals. And we're looking for things that engage external partners. These are all key ingredients of the ways we approach work at the Institute on the Environment. Funds for this RFP come from a variety of places. They come from the Institute's central operating budget. Part of the very reason why the Institute on the Environment exists is to stimulate research and research teams at the university with external partners. Part of it comes from MnDrive environment firms, funds, and some also from other philanthropic sources. This year's RFP is released in the context of a new strategic plan that the Institute will be releasing, has already announced, and there will be formal documents and additional materials about that strategic plan here in 2024. It will last us for several years. I recently posted, or the Institute recently posted a blog from me about key features of that strategic plan. I just want to share a few thoughts about that with you all. The first is that this new strategic plan, which is the second strategic plan the Institute has had in its lifespan, responds to 4 what we call strategic imperatives. So we look forward to 4 things that the Institute must respond to in the coming years. And I invite you to look at that blog post for a description of what those are. So we are responsive to key factors in the world around us, both within the university and external to the university. A second major objective in this strategic plan is to expand the scope of our goal and oriented research, education, and communication. In our last strategic plan, we introduced the notion of impact goals and what it meant to aggregate around common objectives and to contribute research and education and communication, public interest communication that moved us toward those shared goals. In the new strategic plan, we're going to open up that goal-oriented notion a little bit more and refine what it means to pursue an impact goal strategy. Our last impact goals were 3. We focused on drinking water, sustainable land use, and carbon neutrality. Our previous RFPs have also addressed sustainability in food systems. Now we are rolling out 10 what we call domains. These are interconnected areas of work. Why have 10 domains? Because it allows for an expanded set of priorities for the Institute to invest in. That gives us a bigger, more dynamic, more diversified portfolio. It also captures a wider range of expertise and contributions among our University of Minnesota folks, and also our community members who are asking us for this work. And it allows us to expand the scope of work and topics that are oriented toward goals. Melissa will have more to say about how you define a goal within the RFP, but the idea of expanding to 10 domains is central to our new strategic plan. You'll find those in the RFP. I can rattle them off. If you have additional questions about what they mean, we welcome you to reach out to us for additional description. And we love and want to encourage work that crosses over multiple domains. So I'm going to rattle them off. Climate adaptation, mitigation, which includes things like energy transition, biodiversity and biodiversity conservation, sustainable food systems, clean energy, sustainable land and water use, planetary health, environmental justice, things associated with natural capital and ecosystem services, and ways of enabling decision support so that we can reach better and more informed sustainability solutions. So those are our 10 areas or domains, and we're looking for interconnection among them. Now, in our new strategic plan, you're going to see a lot of enduring commitments that the Institute has been doing in its last plan. This goal, even the goal orientation, our mission and vision remains the same. We have a deep commitment at the Institute to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. That is a criteria in our evaluation of these proposals, for example, and our commitment to community engagement and co-production with actual users of sustainability and practitioners. So that is a little bit of background about the broader strategic imperatives and goals and domain areas. Thank you, Noah, for showing those on the screen that occupy the Institute on the Environment in its new strategic plan released this year in 2024. And that background gives us some context for specifically to dive into what is this RFP asking for, hopefully explains a little bit about why, and we should help any proposer orient your ideas towards those broader objectives. So I'd like to turn it over to Melissa Kenny, who is our Director for Knowledge Initiatives, which is the research portfolio that we have here at the Institute on the Environment. And she is the master of the Impact Goal RFP as well. So she knows everything there is to share.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Noah, and thank you all so much for being here. Clearly, I am incredibly excited about this because this is the largest way we as a collective community reinforce our values and our commitment towards really advancing sustainability in meaningful ways, in ways that are meaningful to our state. And so our goal is not that these RFPs are a mystery. Granted, like doing this work is hard, but what we want to do is be very transparent about what this RFP is trying to fund. And we want you to make our job as hard as possible, because if we have great proposals, then it makes it a really joyful, albeit hard, process to really identify a portfolio of ideas that we'll be supporting with this call. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through this call. As we get to things, I'm going to ping pong things to my colleagues, Kathy Jordan, the Director of Leadership and Education for the Institute, and my colleague, Julie Hannes, the Director of Communications, so that they can share their perspective of the kind of scholarship that would be pursued under this RFP within the domains of education, leadership, and communications and storytelling. So, if you are familiar with IonE's Impact Goal proposal process, this should look very familiar. Our goal is not that the RFP changes dramatically year by year, but that it is fairly consistent in terms of its expectations. So this should look very familiar, but there are three big things that are changing because of our IonE strategic plan. And as we go throughout this, my goal is to give you some tips and tricks to think about as you're developing your proposal. So again, you can make your proposal as competitive as possible, and our job super hard. So first is, with this RFP, we are expanding the set of sustainability domains and investment areas. This expands to areas where University of Minnesota has unique capabilities and expertise, and we're expecting that you're going to bring it, and that you're going to bring it both in ways that are deeply invested in developing impact goal areas for one of those domain areas, and we're expecting proposals that might be intersectional across multiple domain areas, like clean energy and environmental justice. And so as you're developing those proposals, just know that you're likely going to be selecting some of the domain areas that you're focused on, and we are expecting that you have both primary and secondary domains, and you are not more competitive if you are addressing all of them. You're actually probably less competitive because we're really looking for proposals that are going to meaningfully move the needle on some of our key sustainability issues. So one, expansion of domains, more opportunities to be part of this call. Second is, sorry, I just sent up balloons because I'm so excited about this, is the impact goal and how impact goals are set. So impact goals are set at the project level, and that's because we value different ways of knowing, and those that are closest to the projects are best able to define meaningful and measurable ways of moving the needle on those sustainability goals. And so as you think about this, one of the key things that we ask as part of this call is for you to define at your project scale an impact goal, how you as a project team are going to be overcoming some kind of knowledge or other kind of barrier that you think would really meaningfully move the needle on one of these domain areas or the intersection of multiple domains. So the third thing that is new is an expanded definition of in Minnesota for the world. So our previous RFPs really focused on projects that were embedded in our great state and things that would be directly advancing sustainability outcomes in our state. We heard from you all, and we realized that there's things that we can learn beyond their state boundaries that actually have direct benefits and indirect benefits to our state. And so when we talk about in Minnesota for the world, those are projects that test and deploy solutions in Minnesota, the home of our university's public service mission, and We are also funding with this RFP cases outside of Minnesota that have a meaningful and direct connection back to Minnesota solution pathways. So another tip is, as you're developing proposals, especially if you're developing proposals where that work is conducted outside of Minnesota, make sure that you make the reviewer's job super easy by clearly stating the barrier within the state of Minnesota that you are trying to provide information to support, and how that project connects back to the state of Minnesota and solution pathways here. So that's the overview of what's new given our grant portfolio and our projects. As we think about this, there's 3 areas of work that we fund. We fund interdisciplinary community engaged research. So a typical portfolio of research as most university researchers and faculty members think about it. And we also fund research related to leadership and education and communication storytelling. So to hear a little bit about what a successful proposal is like within those realms, Kathy, can I first turn things to you to talk about what we're looking for in terms of leadership and education proposals?
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. So there's 3 ways that education or leadership development might sort of feed into a proposal. One is actual research to understand a gap in knowledge about effective sustainability pedagogy. The second is, I think of it as like the NSF broader impacts kind of idea. It's the idea that you might include a student experience or a community education activity to extend the research work, but it's basically a research proposal. And then the third way is development of a course or curricular innovation or a leadership development activity with evaluation, but not, it's not like a research project like you're researching pedagogy per se. It's development of an activity with evaluation. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Julie.
Thanks, Kathy. So hi, everyone. I'm Julie Hannes, as Melissa said. I'm Director of Public Interest Communications at the Institute on the Environment. And I personally feel really privileged to be part of an institution that embraces both the disciplinary knowledge and the advanced practice of communications. And that's something that is reflected in this call for proposals. So there are 2 ways that we welcome communications and communications-based work. First is research to understand a gap in knowledge about effective communications. In this case, you would essentially, not even essentially, you would be proposing a communications research study, and it should be framed in the same manner as any research proposal. We also highly encourage the inclusion of communications or storytelling activities. Much like in research proposals to the National Science Foundation might include broader impacts, so you can think about it in that framework. And so in this scenario, you would most likely be describing your communications or outreach activities or objectives as a subcomponent or within the scope of a research-based project plan. And I would say, I think this, well, both are very, very important. I think this latter piece is particularly relevant this year with the shift of goal setting to the project level. Because we are asking you through these research proposals to tell us within a domain how you want to move the needle on sustainability. And I would be remiss as a communications practitioner, in addition to a scholar, to not point to how the practice of communications are sort of essential in driving impact in terms of how we think about sharing information or engaging people or driving changes in attitudes and thoughts and behavior. And so with that, I'm going to take a step back because I just said a lot really quickly and say we create both communications research projects and communications through the lens of broader impacts, and hand it back to Melissa.
Thank you. And I know that we're going to go through this. So as we're doing this, I'm going to just highlight at the very bottom, there's a Q&A box. And so please feel free to include your questions that you would like answered during this session, because we're going to take about 7 or so more minutes to go through the RFP, and then we're going to flip things to you for any questions that you have. So just to orient you, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at the RFP, I know I included it in the chat, but as you scroll through this, everything that Jessica, Julie and Kathy and I talked about is included in the introduction section and in the RFP overview. So Noah's scrolling down right now just so you have a sense of what it looks like. And then as you're doing this, I want to also highlight when we talk about these projects, if you are proposing a project on the University of Minnesota's campus, yes, that is absolutely a possibility. And the session that Jessica highlighted at the beginning of the RFP might be a great one to connect with people who could help to partner with you on a project like that. As we scroll down to the next page, we get to the competitive call for proposals. And so as Jessica mentioned, this year we're awarding about $2 million of funding across these projects. Now you can propose 2 different kinds of proposals. Medium scale proposals are usually 25 to 50K. They can either be 1 or 2 years. Large proposals are funded between 100K and 200K. These are grants because they're internal that do not include ICR, so that dollar amount is towards direct expenses. They're non-reoccurring, and our goal is that these are in general deployed within a 2-year period of time. If you have additional questions as we go through this, you can also consult our FAQ document, and there'll be links to that. If you scroll down to the next page, we have a number of key deadlines and key dates, such as today's webinar. A few things to point out. We're asking that folks who are interested in submitting a proposal submit a statement of intent or an SOI. We're asking for those by February 12th. It's super easy. It's intended to be a couple of minutes of time, and it helps us to make sure that we're lining up sufficient reviewers that have the expertise needed to review the proposals that we expected. We want to make sure we have people that are qualified to review your proposals. Proposals are due March 12th, and they have to be submitted by this particular submission form. You can go into the FAQ and see what that submission form contains, and that's a hard deadline. If you have any problems submitting those materials, please contact us at IonE-grants@umn.edu so that we can help to support you if you're running into technical difficulties. The proposal has 4 different parts. One is a cover page. The next is a proposal description. That's a 5-page proposal. The third is a project management plan and description, references or citations that you include in your proposal. And then up to 2-page bio sketches or resumes for each team member. There's no particular format for that. Whatever format is most appropriate given the people who are engaged is perfectly fine. We know a number of community members have 1-page resumes. There's no expectation that it be reformatted into an academic context because their expertise lies outside of the university. So we want them to share that in ways that are meaningful to them. And then finally, there's budget documentation that will be provided. Take a look as you go through. There's some specific formatting requirements as these RFPs have that help to make it easy for reviewers to provide their responses. So as we scroll down, you'll see details about each of those components: the cover letter, the proposal, the project management plan and citations and bio sketches, as well as the budget documentation. If you have questions about any of those and it's not answered in the FAQ, please follow up. We know that there's some things that are pretty project specific, like questions around conflict of interest or other things. Please reach out to us individually so that we can help to support you. If you are selected and move forward to the second round of reviews, these are actually done as finalist project pitches. And so if you scroll to the next page, our finalist project pitches are on May 7th and 8th. And if you're selected, we'll have another webinar to help demystify that part of the process and walk you through it. And then if the project is selected and funded, projects begin July 1st, and the funding will be dispersed in June. So you'll get notification by June 1st about the standing of your proposal if you haven't been notified thus far. So the one other thing that I wanted to point out, which is starting on page 10, is our criteria for evaluation and review. And if you talk to any of our reviewers, this is literally what we ask them to evaluate when they are looking at your proposal. Again, like, this is not, we don't want any of this to be a mystery. And if you have questions about it, please reach out to us. And so we're looking for projects that articulate and cleaning and meaningfully move the needle on a more sustainable future among one or more of those 10 domain areas. Projects have to be interdisciplinary, so you have to have scholarly expertise from more than one disciplinary field, and you have to have team members who are outside of the university. The project has to be a new endeavor or a significant pivot. You can't simply just continue existing projects. If you have questions about stage 2 funding for projects that have been previously proposed, please reach out to us, as those are oftentimes special cases, and we want to be really clear and also answer questions you might have about that. You have to clearly state the impact goal and the barrier to achieving that sustainability challenge. What are you trying to overcome through knowledge or the approaches that you're proposing as part of your project? The reviewers will review the rigor and appropriateness of your methods. They'll look at your project outcomes for both the appropriateness, but also the way it will drive impact. And they'll be looking at your team composition and whether it's the right grouping of people, whether your budget and budget justification are reasonable given the scope of this work. And then some differentiators that we oftentimes use is whether or not the proposed team has a potential to leverage this seed support by attracting additional funding or growing the impact of this project in other ways that are impactful. And then projects are also especially competitive if they're pursuing innovative ways of engaging people who have been historically excluded or marginalized, new stakeholders, or if they're using project approaches intended to address or reduce inequitable sustainability pathways. Because people and planet can't prosper together if we're doing that in unjust and inequitable ways. So with that, we're going to flip things to you all and open up the Q&A and see what questions you have that we can help to address. So as we're doing this, no, I'm going to have you flip to the slide right before this. One thing I want to point out is our request for proposal will not change throughout this process, but one document that will is our frequently asked questions. And that's because we really want everyone to have all of the information as we are developing, as people are asking questions and they're getting them answered. So the frequently asked questions or FAQ document will be updated throughout this process, and you'll notice it's kind of long. It's not intended to be read. It's intended to help you find answers to questions that others had that you might also have. You'll also see links here to our statement of intent submission form and our proposal submission form. Both of those are in the RFP document, so you don't have to memorize or take screen grabs of that. Those documents are available for you. I'm gonna just pause here because that Q&A button is right below. If you have questions, and if this helped to give clarity around it or questions arise later, we can also pause at this point and address more personal project questions offline. All right. So we have one question. For those of us not familiar with a successful impact goals project, can you share a classic example of how others have used these funds? Jessica, I see you nodding. I didn't know if that's because you have something at the tip of your tongue that you wanted to jump in on.
Well, I think it's a terrific question. And we could also follow up. And we do have, we could follow up with some additional information. But one thing that comes to mind is that we have lists of all of the funded proposals over the last couple of years. We announced them. So no, I'm going to look at you and see if you'd say something about where those are centrally located. But I think a key thing a person could see is look at the evaluation criteria against the successful proposals and see how prominent those criteria were. Yes. So now they are slightly different for the three things that Melissa identified are distinct about this year relative to the past years, but that they are teams, that they are interdisciplinary, that they address a goal, and that they include external partners where those partners are very active members of the research team. Those would still all be the case. Those criteria be the case in the past. I mean, I have some personal anecdotes of projects that I'm familiar with. There was a project last year funded at UMD that did a really lovely job of integrating educational objectives against the impact goal and research objectives and included community partners. That one stands out for me. We have some long-standing projects of several years ago that have gone on to attract additional external funding, which for us is a big success piece. We have projects that started small and then came back and received additional funding, which that growth model is also important to us. So I'm not giving specifics, but I guess I'm talking around some general notions and pointing to past announcements.
Yes,
Noah,
so you can take a look at the past announcements. It gives you a sense of the breadth of the proposals. A few things that strike me as proposals that are more successful is one, the community partner. And community partner, again, look at the RFP. We're defining that partner in a very broad way. It's people who are outside of the university who have a meaningful relationship to the projects that's being proposed. And really successful projects, those project goals and the barriers and the kind of work that's being pursued, those were developed together. And that's clear and obvious to see through the proposal development and the pitches. And when we've had particularly impactful projects, it's ones where there has been a true partnership between people at the university and people outside of the university towards a shared goal. Projects that have been particularly successful have a clearly identified barrier, and they have a way that they're going to be tackling that barrier. And once we are able to overcome that knowledge gap or an implementation approach, like whether or not carbon credits would work, that we would be in a different place in our journey towards a larger scale visionary sustainability goal like carbon neutrality for Minnesota. So they're figuring out some of the pathways that make meaningful and measurable and significant progress for something that is really important for the community and links to university expertise. Projects that have been particularly successful have really focused on societal impact and how the work that they're doing can lead into next stage work in other places or going after funding or going after new partnerships to be able to expand the reach of that work. I'm thinking about a project that was funded at University of Minnesota Duluth on climate resilience trees. And it started by a community scale request of like, I'm planting a bunch of trees, but I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing. To really thinking about, what are the climate ready trees that should be planted in this area, and how can we bring on board nurseries and build out a market that actually helps us support building up our tree stock in ways that will be resilient to the future that were needed. And that's gotten a lot of funding and traction to be able to really prepare more northern parts of Minnesota for the climate future that we fully expect. And then when we look at the use of funds, funds are provided in ways that are consistent with the work that's being done. And so if you're partnering with a state agency, there's in-kind that's listed for the time that the partners are spending, because those state employees are not allowed to take funding to be able to support their work. But if we're working with a community organization, that as team members, they are paid for their time and labor in a way that is consistent with the work that they are doing. And so we are expecting that funds are going to flow in ways that are consistent with the work that is being done as part of the project, and that people outside of the university are built in as true team members to those projects. So we have another question, and it's kind of a hard question, but is relationship building enough for a goal or an outcome? And maybe I can take this, is if relationship building is your only outcome, then what I would do is I'd take a look at our IonE mini grants. These are 3K grants. And if part of what you're wanting to do is to have funding to support developing new relationships and partnerships that don't exist, so that you would be able to explore ideas together, mini grants are great ways to just get something started over a couple of months to a year. And so that's our funding source that's usually utilized for things related to relationship building. As part of these grants, we are hoping that relationship building will be one of your outcomes that you'll achieve, but that collectively the relationship is at a space where you are doing something active together that is really pursuing a project that's moving the needle on a sustainability issue. And if you're thinking about relationship building in a more nuanced or particular way given your project, please reach out. If that's something that is something you are developing and then testing in a scholarly way, and we can talk specifically about your project. We have a question from someone who has questions about policies concerning collaborations with members from other organizations and businesses. Could we please provide some clarity? I'm not sure exactly what is meant by policies concerning collaborations. We are expecting that all projects that are successful will include community partners, and we define community partners in a very expansive way to include small businesses, industry, state, local government, national governments, international governments, people who are the right people to have as part of a project team in order to pursue the work together. And so we really trust our project groups to both define the goal and to make sure that they're identifying the right team members to really move forward those goals. Jessica?
Yeah, Melissa, can I just add, when you think about the budget with respect to your external partners, of course, the policies about the suitability, we have to address whether or not that organization can receive funds. You referenced state government, for example. But assuming they can receive funds, their budget should capture what is meaningfully and well justified necessary to enable their participation. We don't want to shortchange or undervalue the time or effort of those partners. But I will say one other policy in quotation marks, is to keep an eye on what is the objective of our funding through the Institute. We're looking to stimulate transformative scholarship around the University of Minnesota related to sustainability and the environment. And that is work at the University of Minnesota. We want that work to be engaged externally and relevant and useful, but its purpose is to enable and to stimulate and to grow the enterprise here at the university. So another policy would be, these are not grants for external organizations. They are grants for university personnel, long-term people who have long-term appointments here to work with members outside the university. So I would say that's another policy angle, Melissa.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And with that, I think we've gotten through all of the questions that arose today. We know that there's going to be more as you're developing your proposals, and please reach out. Again, we are so excited to hear your ideas and how you are going to be developing teams that are going to really advance our ability to support people and planet prospering together. And if you're not putting in a proposal this year and you would like to be a reviewer for the IonE Impact Goal grants, please reach out to us at ione-grants@umn.edu. We'd love to have you as a reviewer, and a number of folks that have reviewed before have been quite successful in putting in proposals the next year because they really get a sense for what it takes to have a successful proposal. So we're looking forward to receiving those proposals. And with that, thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day.